Plopper, plop, plop. We're gonna talk about poppers today. This is a bait in my area of the country that is probably just synonymous with catching biggins on. But I think it's kind of lost popularity to a lot of the top waters that you see that are more famous now. Whopper ploppers are famous now. A lot of your buzz toads are famous now. And something that kind of gets overlooked a little bit is just an old school just popper. Just a popper bait. Of course, the company that I know, I'm sure somebody in the comments will know something before the time of it, but the first one that I remember popping style bait was a Rebel Popar. And everybody else has kind of derived their bait from the Popar. So my earliest days from back in the day was throwing a Popar and a buzz bait and a devil's horse. You guys that don't know what that is, you might have to do a little research on Google for it. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why you might want to throw a popper and why you should have a few, no matter what you fish. It doesn't matter if you fish lakes, doesn't matter if you fish ponds, the great pond baits. But there's a certain magic to the popper, and there's a certain reason why it works so well at a given time, and it's a daggum good bait to catch a biggin on. Now I'm going to talk to you like how I do in all my tackle talk videos. We're going to talk about the rod, the reel, the line, and where to fish it, where to fish a popper, where it works best, right here in this video. We'll start out with just the rod and the reel, just like how I always do. My preference in rod and reels or with the popper is, it may be a little different than a lot of people's. I like a shorter rod. This is actually a 6'6". I know I blew somebody's wig off with that one. A 6'6" rod. It's hard to even find a 6'6" rod now. This is a favorite Big Sexy. Ironically, it's the smallest rod in my boat, and it's called a Big Sexy. You got treble hooks on there, so you don't want something super stiff, because you get a big one on, you got one treble hook on, you're gonna blow it up. You're gonna use a lot of profanity in that instance. That's probably what's gonna happen, right? So you want something with a little forgiveness on it. You see this rod is, you see it's got a little tip. You know, it's got a little forgiveness in it. You need that. Usually I'm trying to put a popper in shade. I'm trying to put it in the crease between a pontoon and a dock. So shorter rod, I can be a little bit more accurate. It's not as cumbersome. And I feel like I can twitch with it a little bit better. How you work this bait is you twitch it. And if I got a 7-foot 4-inch rod, you just tend to overpower the bait a little bit. That's why I use a smaller rod. As far as reels go, you know, I'm kind of torn on whether a fast reel is good or a slow reel is good. I just kind of like to stay in the medium, and you know, fast versus slow is always, that's always subjective to whatever you think fast or slow is. To me, a 6/8 to 1 reel, 6/8 to 1 gear ratio reel is not exactly fast, and it's starting on that slower spectrum for me in the rods that I have in my boat. I like the slower one because the whole reason, and we'll talk about this in a minute, the whole reason behind a popper is to put it beside a piece of structure, a dock, a stump, a laydown, a rock, some grass, lily pads, and you aggravate a fish into biting it because it sits there and it goes bloop, bloop, bloop. It doesn't go very far. So a slower reel just lets me keep the bait in the strike zone a little bit better. So I like that, but at the same time, I don't like when one hits it and then I can't keep up with him because my reel's so slow. So I try to stay there in the medium, 6/8 to 1, not a 7/3 to 1 or 7/5 to 1 or 8 or, you know, whatever. You know, we got really fast reels now, so I stay right there in the medium with it on my poppers. As far as line goes, it can vary, guys, on line. Sometimes I'll throw a braid with a little piece of fluorocarbon on it, like a piece of fluorocarbon about that long. My buddy Mark Daniels taught me that when I was throwing a prop bait, because obviously the braid is the most buoyant line you can use. And you use the fluorocarbon, or you can use mono, a little piece of mono in front of it to keep the line from twisting around and getting tied up in the prop or the hooks. In a popper case, if you use straight up braid, the bait's gonna foul up a lot. Braid's very plush, very soft, so when the line lays on the water, it has a tendency to kind of coil back up and get in the hooks and foul up, so you make that pretty cast and you go to work the bait and it's foul up around the hooks. Again, intense language is usually the result of that. So there's times when I'll do that. Usually if I'm fishing around grass, I'll use braid to fluorocarbon. And just a little piece of fluorocarbon about that long, 8 to 10 inches long, it won't affect how the bait acts, because you know fluorocarbon is the least buoyant. I'm not going to say it sinks, but it's the least buoyant of the lines. Which I guess if it doesn't float, then it does sink. But whatever, it's the least buoyant of all the lines. So I'll do like 30-pound test braid to 25 pound test fluorocarbon leader. Just a little piece. You don't want 24 inches. You just want 8 or 10 inches. Or if I'm fishing in open water like how I am today, I will use 20 to 25 pound test monofilament. You can use 17-pound test monofilament too. Reason being, treble hooks, man. Treble hooks. And with a popper, the fish is already coming up at the bait. He's striking up. So you know what he's going to want to do when he's on. He's going to want to jump. And you got all that working against you with treble hooks. And man, just if I can get away with mono, I really use mono. Mono floats. It's worked for years. It still works. It still catches them. Most of the time, they're going to hook themselves on this bait. So you don't really need to sting him a whole bunch. That's the setup. That's the technical side of it. I almost always swap out my hooks on my popper, even on this one. This is one I got from shopcarls.com. This is a Guggen blooper. This is a really good. It's got a good sound to it. I like it a lot. You use if you go to shopcarls.com, there's a lot of different poppers that you can choose from there. Various colors. Color does matter for sure, but I almost always throw a shad pattern all the time, or white, like you see me throwing here. That's all the technical side I got for you. I'm trying to think, is there anything you would need to know to throw a popper? Tie that sucker on with a Palomar knot, get busy like what we're about to do now. Let's go. A couple situations you might want to throw a popper. It works you'd be surprised, just about any shallow water situation, it works pretty daggum good. But I do like to throw it in the fall for a couple reasons. What it's basically mimicking is small brim or small shad that's been injured. He's trying to get started, but he can't. He's trying to dig, and then he just floats back to the top. Trying to dig and floats back to the top. What I'm looking for most of the time when I'm throwing a popper, little shade pockets, little undercut banks, laydowns down the side of a dock. It's notorious for catching them around submerged hydrilla. For the reason for that, you see, I'll throw it up here by this piece of wood right here, and I can just keep it in place. If I had a buzz bait, or if I had something that I throw out and reel back, by the time it hits the water, I engage the reel and I start bringing it back, it's come past the structure. But if I want to throw by this little piece of wood right here, I can throw it up there, all right, and I can work it there, for 15, 20 seconds. And if there's one up there, I'm probably going to tick him off, and he's going to at least show himself. It's an important tool, not only because I can catch fish, but in practice for a tournament. If I want to know where fish are, it might take me a lot longer to flip that little piece of wood right there, all right? But I can take a popper, and he'll at least show me that fish are around wood. A lot of times the Topwater is great for that because you can cover a lot of water, and it'll show you where fish were. If a fish strikes at my spinnerbait, or if a fish strikes at my Texas rig, I will never know it unless I set the hook or fill it. They'll come up at a Topwater, I'll never hook him, but I saw him, and it'll show me like, hey, I need to slow down, and perhaps maybe even use a different bait. So that's what I like about a popper. It stays in the strike zone a long time, but it's a Topwater, so I can see where those fish are. It'll get the fish to show themselves. Any kind of little undercut bank, I throw it around docks. Anywhere where I feel like I know that there's a bass, but I know they're trying to act real ignorant and ignore me, I'll throw a popper. I'll throw a prop bait too. Any kind of Topwater that'll stay in the strike zone a lot longer is kind of what you want to throw. Putting that little bait, this is a prime example why I like to use a shorter rod. See those little holes and caverns in this laydown? With a shorter rod, I feel like I can place it a lot better. A little roll cast in that laydown, and I'll make, like, I won't just put it in one hole of this laydown or one little lane that I can see to break my bait down. I'll put it in this one, I'll go right here, and I'll go right there. Because dude, fish can get really sneaky sometimes. And a lot of times if a fish is sitting in the laydown, what if he's just sitting there and he's just chilling and he ain't really wanting to be bothered? It can be like you when you're watching football, like you don't want to talk to nobody when you're watching football. I feel like bass can be like that sometimes. They'll sit in a lay down and just chill. So I'll really be pretty particular about my cast. The little 6.5 foot rod, I feel like it makes it a little bit easier to place it in there. Now you're always going to want to use what works best for you, but I think it works best like this. You can see I can work that bait with a popper. It stays in place. I got a little drawing power, and you can really agitate and catch you a big old nasty bass on a plopper, on a popper, not a plopper, a popper. Lay downs, shade is the number one thing. Bass love shade because they feel protected. Remember that when you're throwing your popper. If you don't remember anything else, shade, shade, shade. They love that because they feel protected and they're ambush predator. You remember that, you're going to catch more fish on your poppers.